right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode whatever, because now I'm self-conscious about it right now, about putting out an episode number. This is episode something or other, and we have with us once again, Miss Cristy. You're going to have to say your last name one more time.
Tometich.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tometich. All right, that's it. Yep.
That's me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And then Miss Kera, you're going to actually be the one leading this conversation, even though I'm opening this, but you're running the show today.
Well, it's going to be a short one. I feel like, compared to the last one that we did on dating, which was pretty long.
Yeah.
But I just really wanted to, because you also have a podcast, right?
Yes.
Cristy Talks.
Yes.
And so I wanted you to elaborate on one of the episodes you did as far as impact.
Sure.
So tell me the full title again, because I just wrote impact.
Yeah, it was called Living an Intentional Life of Impact, and it was my first episode to put out my podcast into the world. So yes.
Honestly, we were so excited for you when we saw it, and I think that actually pushed us to do it. Okay, wait, Cristy was confident. We can do it. We can do it. Why aren't we doing it?
And I remember talking to you about it. You're like, oh, we have to do a podcast. I'm like, yeah, I want to do a podcast too. And then I'm just so happy we all just put it out into the world.
But it was over a year ago that we, because it was June or July of
that is so
whatever
weird.
year that was last year.
Yes, it was.
But I think it took Alex coming in, and then it took you doing yours for us to be like, okay, we can do it. What's holding us back, kind of? We have nothing. We have no excuse not to at this point, right?
Totally.
So I wanted you to kind of just elaborate more, because I think your podcast was 15 minutes, maybe. It really wasn't that long.
It's bite-sized,
Which, I like that. We tend to talk way too much.
I feel like if I had
Before she goes in,
though,
can you flex on everybody for a second? How many listeners do you average?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't check. I try not to check those statistics.
She's good.
Because it'll get me thinking too much about because I'm very much into the content creation, social media space. So whatever I encourage someone when they're first creating content, I'm like, do not look at the numbers. Focus on what you're putting out there.
Well, and I like that you said that, because I had to remind myself the other day. I was like, okay, it's not about the numbers, because sometimes you're like, oh, I want to impress myself, or I want to see how well I'm doing based off the numbers. And I had to remember that it was just being obedient in what we felt like we were supposed to do. Because honestly, even if it just impacts our close friends and family, then that's good. That's just as good as if a million people heard it and no one was impacted.
Totally.
So I also agree with, I'm glad that you don't look at the numbers and you can just hey, this is on my heart. I'm gonna put it out there, and hopefully someone is blessed by it.
Because it kills your creation process, your creativity, in my opinion, just with any type of content creation. So I'm like, nope, no numbers, no anything like that. Just put it out.
So what was your purpose behind creating your first one of being intentional with impact?
So I've had this concept on my heart for a long time. My word is purpose always. I'm like, oh, live with purpose and stuff. And I think more than just finding your purpose, that one thing you're called to in life, I really wholeheartedly believe that just every day can be lived with intention and purpose. It's just more of a concept that you live with than oh, my purpose is this specific thing. I'm called to this people group and to do this specific thing. It's no, sure you could be called to people group, but it's not always so specific. It's just how are you being aware of others kind of thing. So when I thought about doing a podcast, and what I wanted it to encourage people with is just, I looked at my life and just kind of all the people that in the midst of so much brokenness and things I went through, or instability, they took the time, youth leaders, youth pastors, to just really be intentional with me and impact me in a way that changed my life. It was crazy. My last youth pastor I had, his name was Jeff. Is Jeff. He just called me this week about something, and we hadn't talked in 9 years. And I told him, Jeff, you have no idea how much in life I do. And I think, what would Jeff do? And he was my youth pastor for 4 months, because he transitioned into that position the last 4 months of my senior year. He hired me on for my first official ministry job that summer to work in youth ministry in Texas. And it just changed my life, and it had such a deep impact. And it was so cool to be able to tell that to someone 9 years later. And I'm like, you're still one of the people I still respect. And not that I've lost respect for a lot of people, but a lot of people change, and you kind of wake up in life and be like, oh, maybe this person was a little weird. But the fact that I could say that to someone just means so much. And I was just thinking about my own life and about how I'm so much about impact and purpose. And I'm And it's because of those people that were very intentional to make sure that I was okay and make sure that, you know, in the midst of my crazy life that I had someone to talk to that, you know, really made a difference for me.
Well, we just, one of our podcasts came out today and it was about purpose. I wasn't here when Dave and Alex recorded it, but it was cool to hear Alex talk about your purpose is to love God and love others.
Yes,
And if you're being intentional with that every day, then the impact it does have, you know, just on everyone around you. But I guess with youth group too, in churches, sometimes we can be worried about the number. Like, am I growing? Well, even like the numbers with your podcast. Who am I? But
I was listening.
you know, are you intentional with the kids that are there?
Right.
Or are you worried about just getting more?
Yeah, so when I was in my early high school years, like my middle school, early high school years, I lived in like Arrowhead. I don't know if you guys know where that is.
Yeah.
It's like super tiny church. We had this church like Calvary Lake Arrowhead, and it was like maybe like 200 people, like super small. And we had a youth pastor and like maybe a group of like, I don't know, like at the most 50 kids, but on average, like more like 20, 30. And those youth leaders like changed my life. Like they, like all the beach trips we would take, all the, you know, beach camp where we would do like, I don't know if you guys remember like Spirit West Coast, or it was this like big like concert thing. Like the time they took, because now I look at their lives, they've moved on with their lives obviously, and they, you know, they have kids and everything, but I'm like, but the fact that, like, that small impact that they took for those 20, 30 kids in life, like, absolutely changed the trajectory of my life, I feel like. So I just think that's beautiful,
So I'm going to go through your points.
Yes.
Okay, because I did try to take notes, but I was like, oh, maybe, like, just hearing her elaborate more on it. The first one was...
Do you feel critiqued right now?
No.
Okay.
I wasn't critical.
No. I'm just asking.
So let me say, the way I even came up with this is because I've always wanted to write a book called Influence, and then like pushing off the ER, like how to have influence in a world of influencers, you know?
I love that.
So this is originally like the chapters I wrote out for that book, and that's what I decided to do my first podcast about. So I'm like, let's talk. I love it. Yeah.
And now she's got someone asking her questions, so she doesn't feel silly, like just speaking to herself for 30 minutes, you know?
I love it. Okay. So like these points that you're breaking, so these are the like the points that you would say like are the breakdowns of your book.
Yeah.
Are you still gonna write this book?
I hope so. Yeah.
Ooh, all right.
I hope so, for sure.
You should.
It's just the word influencer's going out, so I don't know. But, you know, it's
you gotta do it real quick.
Creator. Yeah, I'm like, oh, like people are like over the word influencer.
Is that word dying?
What?
Is that word dying out?
No, it's that now it's like creator, or like the word is just kind of going out. I think that's like influencers are fake, so people aren't using it that much. Which that's the whole point. It's like having real influence in a world of influencers, right? So I'm like, I have to write it soon if I'm gonna write it.
Or you're gonna have to like hit up a thesaurus and come up with another word for influencer that you could use.
Exactly.
So the first one is awareness, and it said self-awareness and allowing others to be aware of what's going on with you. And then also yourself being aware that others have struggles you may not notice.
Yeah.
Which definitely, because I think sometimes we get so offended if someone comes off offensive, even though they're just having a bad day.
Yeah.
So how can you impact them without, well, like you're already offensive, so how are offended? So how do you?
Yeah. How do you kind of
elaborate on that awareness aspect?
When I was thinking about that, I was just thinking about my like own experience and just kind of like how, you know, for so long, I lived a very different life. I thought, you know, like, oh my gosh, I went through this and I went through that and no one can understand me kind of thing. So like, I think that stopped me from being vulnerable when I was young, because I was like, you know, it's too complicated, you know, so I'm not even going to try and articulate this. It's too complicated. Like, in a sense, it was probably like a pride thing. Like, I'm just like, I've lived too unique or cool or weird or all the in-between kind of life, you know, like no one's lived in this many places and done this many, like this specific. And it's like, no, but like pain is relatable. And like, maybe even if we have different experiences in life, we have similar pains. And so I think just realizing that, you know, like you can relate to others is so powerful. But when I was going through like a really hard time in my life when I was like 18 and I was trying to figure out where to live and I had nowhere to live and everything, I was staying with my family friends, and I was really close to their son, and he had a girlfriend at the time, and now she's his wife and I love her. But I just remember her just being very aware of kind of like my pain, like, and it's so interesting because I think she had met like missionary kids or people like me she had been close to, so somehow she was even more aware, I felt like, than her boyfriend, which was the one I was close with, you know. she just had some insight. Like, I just remember everything was going crazy. Like, I was trying to figure out where I was going to live or if I was going to go back to Bible college, and I felt forced into the situation, and, you know, like, too many people at play, like, moving the chess, you know, to be like, oh, you're going there for free, or, but you have to do this. I don't know, like, all this craziness, and I just didn't know what to do, and there was a bunch of people in the house, and I just went upstairs and, like, locked myself in that room, and I'm like, and Raquel came in, his girlfriend, you know, and she just sat there with me and, like, did her makeup. And she's like, are you okay? And she just knew that I couldn't be alone. Like, and it was, like, really odd to me that, like, she was aware that, like, everything was going crazy, you know. And I was like, she was aware. Like, you just felt, and she's, like, a very, very empathetic person, like, now, knowing her for a lot of years, you know. But that just really spoke to me that even as a friend, like, you can become aware that other people are in pain just maybe because you've met someone like them, even if you haven't experienced the same thing, you know. So.
Well, even Dave just right now when he went out and there was a lady out there and he took the time to be aware of like how she was behaving and what was potentially going on in her life, and he's like, hey, are you using again?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure that impacted her because she was probably like, wow, he noticed and he cares to ask.
Yeah.
So just being aware of everyone, you know, in their situations and caring to just either be present or ask questions.
Yeah, to realize that the world's not just about you, that other people are living their individual experiences. I think that's a huge growth in life, right, to have, is that, yeah, like, people are living their own lives and you're not the center of it. It can help, and, you know, to be intentional about that.
So the next one you had was empathy. Even though situations can be unique, the feelings can be relatable. And I hadn't thought about that because I feel like we do all have different situations, but the feeling we're feeling, right? Yeah. Everyone has felt that way. Even if the situation wasn't the same, we've all felt loss or hurt or confused or angry. Like, those are just words to describe that feeling that we all share, even though we might have felt it because of different circumstances.
Yeah, I think so. Like I was saying earlier, like, my youth leaders played a big role in my life, and I think all of them had lived very different lives than me, but they were all very empathetic and present, and I always remembered that even though maybe we didn't experience the same type of life, like, there was parts of my story or parts of my situation that were really relatable to them, and that they were able to help me with that. Or, like, simply saying, like, I had one youth pastor once just say, yeah, that's hard. And it's funny because I feel like so often, like, my fear with opening up when I was young is that someone would just start trying to, like, preach to me or give me, like, a lot of, like, unsolicited advice, or, like, trying to, like, fix me in different ways. But for someone to simply hear that, like, to hear that someone simply say, like, that's hard, and recognize the struggle, and not try and, like, offer advice that, like, you know, like, I even struggle with this now. Like, there's not solutions to some things in my life. You know, there's some things that I'm even going through right now, and I'm like, there's not a solution to this, but you can be the person that says, this is how you fix it, A, B, and C, and then me have to, like, explain why that's not possible and all this. Or you could be the person that says, wow, Cristy, like, that's really hard. And I think that's what having empathy is not having lived that same life, but knowing that the struggle is there, you know?
I'm very much one to give advice because I just feel like, oh, we can just fix it. Like, but so that's hard for me. My son Wyatt is so empathetic, and I have to remind him that your heart can break for them, right? You can feel bad, but don't look at them like they're broken, because then he'll tend to just want to, like, take care of them, right? They need me. And in a way, it's just, I think one of your things was being present, right? Being a good friend, being present, supportive. And so for him, I'm just like, just be a good friend, be present, but don't look at them like they're broken. And like they need you to fix them. But you could still be there for them and be kind.
Just being that kind of equal friend, not like I'm looking down on you or you're looking up to me. It's just like we're looking at each other and we're helping each other through this crisis kind of thing.
So the next thing you said was another way to be impactful is to ask questions. What kind of questions?
Yes.
Like, not to go, like, maybe cross too many boundaries.
Sure.
What are some safe questions to ask?
Totally. I mean, yeah, that's so interesting, because I think, like, so even, like, growing up in church, I noticed that, like, even the way I went to Bible college and stuff, and the way biblical counseling was taught to me in a class was so, like they say that they're struggling with this and this and that, give them this Bible verse. They're saying they're struggling with this, give them this Bible verse. And I remember me and my sister took this class together when we were there at the same time, and we're like, what? We're like, okay. And then a few years later, when we were really involved in our church, and they started having everyone go through like a counseling class, and it was a book by Paul Tripp. I forget the name of it right now, but it was about counseling, and his main emphasis is to like ask questions. That's the biggest part of counseling, that like you don't even get to the giving advice part till like way down the road. You're just asking questions because there's so much of a situation that you like don't understand, and someone just needs to like talk through it, right? So just ask details about the questions, just, details about the situation. So whether it's just like, okay, so tell me what you're feeling. So tell me, how that impacted your everyday life. Tell me how that is impacting your future. How's it impacting your past? Like, just trying to get where they're at before you even start talking, before you even start trying to say, or this is what the Bible says. Because, I even think of myself, like some moments that have hurt me the most is like when I am vulnerable with someone and they start giving me so much advice, and then I don't even
like overwhelmed.
Yes.
You're overwhelmed with options and advice.
Yes, exactly. And it's also like they have no clue about the depth and the pain of the situation. To them, it's just this quick fix, or they start comparing to themselves and they start saying, oh, when I went through this, or let me tell you this. And I'm like, we live different lives, we're different humans. So instead, like, if this is the first time I'm telling anyone and you're starting to jump to all these things and relate to it, like, that's just not the way to go. The way to go is start asking questions, because there might be way more to a situation than you ever thought was there, I think that's what we have to realize with others. It's just like everyone has a deeper story than we give them credit for, because we're self-centered human beings. We always think like our experience with that person, but they actually have so much maybe logic or emotions that went behind every decision they made, and we're judging them for the result, so.
Oh my goodness. Okay, what about being a good friend? Another way to be impactful that maybe people don't, because we say we have a ton of friends.
Yeah.
Right. I have like 50 friends, but how many of those friends actually check in on you? So how can you be a good friend to someone?
Yeah, I think friendship is okay. Like, I do feel like in some ways, like, the older I get, I realize, like, friendship is, like, dying out. Like, people kind of get in their routines and they get in their communities. And it's like, we're friends with the people that, have the babies that are 1 to 2 years old. We're friends with the people that are married. We're friends with the people that are just dating. Like, everyone gets in, it's like high school all over again. And it's just like,
because you're going through the same season. Like, you're able to relate with them because they just got married. Oh, we just got married too. And you just had a kid. Me too.
Yeah.
Like, so it's that season of life that you're in.
Totally.
Yeah,
and that is so valid. Of course it's valid. But at the same time, you want to know that the world's bigger than the people in your season, right? And so I think, there's checking in, there's texting, but there's also just like making sure that just because someone's not in the season of life than you could still have them be part of whatever you're doing, and vice versa. But I think coffee dates, like I've always liked that with my girlfriends and stuff, just to, check in and ask them their story. If I'm first getting to know someone, I love to just ask them what your story is, like, and like if it's a couple, they always think I'm asking them their love story. I'm like, no, like, what's your story? Like, your life story. And it just like totally breaks the ice, that boundary of like, I'm trying to put up this image to this is what I've been struggling with, or this is what I struggled with. And you start getting to know like the deepest parts about someone, and it's like really powerful, all of a sudden, someone like well and deeply that it would have maybe taken months to get to that point, but instead it took an hour just because you asked a couple questions, so.
Good. And then what about, okay, so when you said this, I was kind of like, well, obviously, it was something like along the lines of pick your kids up from school. Do you remember that? And I was like, well, of course we should pick our kids up from school. And Alex was like, I don't have another option. Like, I have to pick my kids up from school. So, but then when you said be a parent your kids can count on and the type of person people can rely on, I was like, yes.
I know.
The biggest impact you can have is to those around you, right? And to your children and to your friends. So being a reliable friend and being the parent that your kids can rely on to pick you up or to help you or, help you through maybe a confrontation they're in or something like that, being dependable.
Yeah. I think that's huge. Yeah, it's like such a given, right? But I'm like, well, if you've been forgotten at school before,
Yeah, well, I heard, I was like, where is she going with this?
Yeah. So, yeah, I genuinely believe, like, I could talk about impact all day and how you can be intentional. Yeah, but build a brand online, get your voice out there, do this, do that. We could go on and on, but I'm like, but if the 5 people around you think you're a horrible human being, like, what kind of impact have you made in the world? Like, why do you want to impact thousands when you can't impact the people in front of you? Like, not just, like, are you making making an impact, what do they say about you? Like,
Yeah.
what do they think of you as, you know? So I think that comes into like parenting and just like, yeah, just being a dependable human being. But I'm like, I feel like the most impact you can have, the most legacy you can leave in the world is the child that you have, you know, like, and it's like what they think about you and just being there for them, like picking them up from school every day, knowing that they can count on you. Like later in life, they know that they can count on you. You know, something I appreciate so much about my boss, Joe, because we were talking about how I work with Fred Jordan Missions and Joe Jordan. No matter what we're doing, like we could be filming, we could be doing this, and unless his phone is off or something or in airplane mode, like, but if his phone rings and it's his son or his daughter, he like picks up. Same with his wife, like they pick up. Like it's like no matter what, if like we're somewhere and the son's in town or something, it's like, oh, I have to go meet up with him. I have to go do this. It's like they drop everything for their kids. And I've just always thought like you would think that's normal, but I really feel like it's unique. Like that they're like kids call them like every day, you know? And I'm like, so something that simple, like just being someone that your kid in adulthood, because their kids are like my age, can like count on a regular basis, I think is so powerful. Yeah.
Well, I am so glad that you elaborated more on that. I know. It was a really quick podcast, but I listened to it because you have so many up there, but they're all very short.
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, I know she has more to
Yeah.
say. So I appreciate you and
thank
all of
you.
your time and all of your advice.
Thank you.
That you've been, because I was like, yeah, like even though I'm thinking like Dave and I make an impact on a daily basis, some of these I was like, okay,
Yeah.
like asking more questions because I am someone who just gives advice. I'm just like, this is how you fix it. But I think as a mom, like my kids are like, I'm like, oh my gosh, let me just fix that for you, or let me just tell you what to do. So when it comes to friendships, I have to remember that they don't want my advice. Sometimes they do just want me to listen, and then I'm not sure how many questions to ask, like how far can I go? But I think the more questions you have and the more questions you have answered, the bigger and better the picture is, so that you know how, if they do want your advice, how to advise them. Rather than just giving your opinion, because sometimes without all the information, you're just throwing out opinions that might work.
And, you know, I do want to say, like, you guys are just such a beautiful example to me just of how you impact your children. Like, you have so many children, and, like,
that's my full-time job, though. Like, and I take that very seriously.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think people understand. Like, I don't just try to keep them alive. Like, that is my job.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, I feel like I think I mentioned this in the other podcast we did, but I think I'm, like, sometimes, like, more cynical than not. Like, I'm like, oh, everyone's bad in the world. No one is, like, no one's intentions are good, like in these Christian circles or whatever. But I remember the night I met you, we were doing, I think, the toy drive a few years ago, and we were eating dinner at the church, like someone made dinner or whatever, and we were just talking. You were saying like, yeah, we might even adopt a kid because, you know, we have a good marriage. You were like,
I was like, why not?
And you were just talking, and I just remember like driving home that night, like it was like super late at night. I still had like an almost 2-hour drive home. And I just felt so filled and so encouraged because I felt like I just met really good people. And I genuinely mean that. Like, I was like, I don't feel like I'm quick to be like, oh, that person's weird, you know?
You can read vibes.
I
can read
vibes. I'm like a gut reactor, right? So I trust my gut a lot. And I just remember meeting, like, well, I had met Dave, but that was the first time I met you, and meeting you guys together, I just felt like they were just genuinely good people. And when I talk about impact and the biggest impact you can make with others in your children, like I do think of you guys, and so I just think
thanks, Cristy. We're trying over here, man. It's hard, but we're trying.
Yeah.
What about you, Alex? You have any questions as far as impact?
No, I was just super impressed. It was fun to just get to sit back and listen to that one. So,
well, very good.
She's really smart.
I know. I like her. She is wise. No, she's always been so encouraging. The one that, sorry, I missed one.
Yes.
Pointing out people's potential.
Oh, yes.
And I wanted to say, like, yes, you are always so encouraging. Even when I don't expect it, you know, you're just like throwing out some encouragement. Like, yeah, you guys should do this. I'm like, you're right. Cristy said we should. We should totally do this. Yes. And I love people because it's hard, you know, we encourage so much that sometimes we don't always experience from other people. They might say thank you. We experience a lot of gratitude, but not so much like, I see your potential. Yes, you should do that.
Go for
and
it.
especially like with Dave and I, we don't have like this a lot of like education in it or training. We just kind of are going and doing. And sometimes you can second guess yourself and be like, am I worthy of this? Am I doing the right thing? Am I qualified? So to have just people like you who can come in and like, hey, no, you should do that. That would be great. I'm like, Cristy said it would be great.
Oh, yes. No, I fully believe. Call out people's potential. I'm like, because I think of even like when I was really young and I was like in middle school and, you know, the youth group culture and stuff. And I know some youth leaders that like told me to design a flyer or like stuff like that. Like, and you know, like what I do in my job right now, it's very design based, marketing based, social media based, all that. And like the little things when I was young that cultivated that, you know, the preschool director that hired me at 13 years old to do the, you know, photos for the kids, you know, the headshots, whatever, the school pictures. Like all those first little jobs and told me, you know, Cristy, you're really good at this. Or like, I remember, the youth leader that told me to do a flyer, like I didn't have anything, you know, and I had to do like a school project. He let me borrow his Mac for like a week. Like, and he's like, and then I would like do stuff on it. And he's like, Cristy, you're really good at this. Like just seeing you move on the computer. And I told him that like 5 years ago, I like went to visit them. And he's like, really, like he didn't even remember any of that, right? Like you don't even remember half of the speaking life into people that you do. You don't even remember like those moments of impact, but the person being impacted always does. And I just feel like everything in that has led me to like, you know, go down the paths I'm going. And even in work and just being so encouraging, you know, like people I work with right now, like it's just they've been so encouraging in design and anything I've done, you know, Dwight, Gina Thompson, like they're all very like, yeah, Cristy, go for it. And so I'm like, I want to be that cheerleader for someone else. I want to be like, oh my gosh, you're like so good at this. You have a voice. And that's one thing, like I can really tell when someone like is good at talking or has a voice or would be good on social. So when they don't, I'm like, oh my gosh, you have no clue. Like you could really do this.
Well, I think adults do it a lot for kids, if that makes sense. Oh, that was so good. Good job. You should do this. You'd be really good at that. But adults don't do it a lot for other adults. Like it's really rare to like hear it. That's why I'm like, oh my gosh, that's something new. I haven't heard that. I love that. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for your tips. Thank you for sharing and for being so encouraging and awesome. And for being here on whatever number podcast this is.
Whatever it is.
Alex is insecure and I can't count very well right now.
Cristy ruined me. That's what happened.
Sorry, it's my Enneagram 8. Just
She's like, just don't say
with that being said, before we go, Miss Cristy, can you please put your socials where folks can find you out and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, so I'm mostly on Instagram, so you can find me there at Cristy.Tometich. I have a really complicated last name, so it's literally, and I don't have an H in my name, so in case anyone wants to put an H in Cristy, it just sounded out. My name's not Tristy, it's Cristy. That's what I've always said. So
to all the Tristinas out there,
yes,
that's for you.
Sorry. But yeah, it's Cristy, so it's CRISTY.Tometich, TOMETICH. It's on Instagram. You can find me, DM me, or just whatever. I like to create content. I like to put stuff out there, so I'm right there.
Right on. We have sandwiches waiting for us.
I know, I'm so hungry.
It's time to eat. All right, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. We out.
Bye.